So there's this woman named Andrea Johnson who possibly has the worst job in South Africa right now. She's the head of IDAC, the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, which means her literal job description is to investigate corrupt cops while other corrupt cops try to stop you. And this week, she testified before Parliament's ad hoc committee, and let me tell you, the levels of dysfunction and danger she's dealing with are genuinely impressive. Let's start with the most alarming revelation. Andrea Johnson has been receiving death threats. Not vague, we're watching you stuff, nah, but specific get body bags ready threats. So someone is so mad about her investigating corruption that they're literally threatening to kill her and telling her to prepare the body bags in advance, which is both terrifying and weirdly organized. Like, at least they're giving her a heads up about the body bag situation. Very considerate murderers, really thinking about logistics. Johnson testified that she's been getting these threats. So she's been getting these threats while trying to do her job, which is investigating whether criminal syndicates have indeed infiltrated the police force. Spoiler alert, they absolutely have, and everyone involved is very upset that she's pointing it out. It's like being a health inspector at a restaurant where the kitchen is actively on fire and the chef keeps threatening you for writing it down. Now, here's where it gets complicated in a very, very South African way. Johnson's husband works in crime intelligence, right? That's the very unit that's currently being investigated in connection with the Cat Matlala case. So she's investigating corruption in a unit where her husband works, which creates what we in the business call an awkward dinner table situation. When parliamentarians asked her if she shares information with her husband, you want to know what the answer she gave? She gave possibly the best answer I've ever heard. Pillow talk gets people killed. Yeah, you get the idea. Could literally get someone murdered. Most people's work-life balance issues are like, my boss emails me after hours. Hers are, if I tell my husband about my day, people might die. That's a level of workplace stress that goes way beyond needing a mental health day. Johnson was called to testify specifically to respond to KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations that IDAC has rogue elements protecting drug cartels. Mkhwanazi has been on this whole crusade claiming that criminal syndicates have captured the police, prosecutors, and the courts, and he specifically pointed fingers at IDAC, suggesting they are part of the problem instead of part of the solution. And Johnson's response, basically, that press conference he held on July 6th was unnecessary, which is a very polite way of saying, this man held a whole press conference to publicly accuse my unit of corruption without evidence and made my job exponentially harder. He's right, but come on. She pointed out that Mkhwanazi was actually the acting national commissioner at the time and could have just called her directly instead of going to the media. But why have a private conversation when you can hold an entire televised press conference and cause maximum chaos? I like Mkhwanazi's thinking. The really interesting part is that Johnson confirmed politicians are being investigated in connection with the Cat Matlala case, but she can't say who because it's an ongoing investigation. So somewhere in South Africa right now, there are politicians sweating bullets, knowing that IDAC is looking into their connections with an alleged drug lord who was paying police officials millions of rands in bribes, buying them antelopes, and funding their kids' weddings. As ridiculous as that sounds, it is true. Johnson also had to address accusations that IDAC was complicit in protecting Gauteng drug cartels. Her defense was pretty straightforward. Her unit has been investigating these matters. She's presented evidence to Parliament, and Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's public accusations have actually undermined their work by tipping off the very criminals they're investigating. It's like if you're planning a surprise party and then someone announces it to the person you're supposed to be surprising, except instead of a party, it's arresting corrupt officials, and instead of ruining a surprise, it's letting criminals destroy evidence. What makes this whole situation darkly comedic, Sama? Well, it's the fact that Johnson is caught in the middle of what's basically a turf war between different factions of law enforcement who all claim to be fighting corruption while simultaneously accusing each other of being corrupt. Mkwanazi says IDAC is compromised. IDAC says Mkwanazi went public without following proper channels. Meanwhile, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is on special leave because he's been implicated in the very corruption scandals everyone is investigating. It's corruption investigating corruption all the way down because of corruption. The fact that Johnson's testimony was described as voluminous by committee members tells you just how much dysfunction she's having to respond to. Most people give testimony that's like, here are the facts, thanks for having me, goodbye, stay safe, God bless. Johnson apparently showed up with a statement because there are so many accusations, so many investigations, so many death threats, and so much interdepartmental warfare that it requires an entire book to explain. She came with a whole book of statements, and through all of this, the death threats, the accusations, the fact that her husband works in the unit she's investigating, the politicians undermining her work, the criminals threatening her life, Andrea Johnson is still showing up to Parliament to testify under oath about what a unit is doing. That is one brave woman. She is still investigating corruption despite knowing that doing so puts a bullseye on her back. She is still trying to hold people accountable in a system where accountability seems to be treated as an optional suggestion rather than a requirement. The cynic in me wants to say that this is all pointless, that nothing will come of these investigations, just like the Zondo Commission, that the corrupt officials will stay protected and all of Johnson's work will amount to nothing. But the fact that she's receiving death threats, it says she's hitting something important. When you threaten to kill someone who's not supposed to be a threat to you, it means she's touching something important. Telling her to get body bags ready. What? It means they're scared of what she might uncover or who she might implicate. Which brings us back to the fundamental absurdity of her situation. The head of the anti-corruption unit investigating police corruption is being threatened by corrupt police as usual, while being accused by other police of being corrupt herself, while her husband works in the unit being investigated, while politicians who might be implicated are overseeing her testimony. It's corruption inception, and we need to go deeper. The reality is that Andrea Johnson represents one of the last functional pieces of South Africa's anti-corruption infrastructure. The Inspector General of Intelligence has been suspended. The police minister is on special leave. SAPS leadership is at each other's throats. The only thing standing between complete collapse and some semblance of accountability is IDAC and Andrea Johnson's apparent willingness to do her job despite everyone trying to stop her by any means necessary. So when she says pillow talk gets people killed, she's not being dramatic, she's being literal. When she receives death threats telling her to get body bags ready, that's not hyperbole. That's her actual work environment. When she can't even discuss her cases with her own husband because of conflicts of interest and security concerns, that's the reality of investigating corruption in a system that's been captured by the very criminals you're trying to prosecute. Well, I can't even talk to my significant other about what I'm going through anymore. And the most depressing part, this is all happening in public. This is incredible. She's testifying before Parliament. The threats are known. The conflicts are being documented. The corruption is being exposed in real time. And yet, there is no guarantee that anything will actually change, that anyone will actually be held accountable, or that the people threatening Andrea Johnson will face any consequences for trying to intimidate a law enforcement official doing her job. But at least we can appreciate, we can all appreciate The dark comedy of South Africa's anti-corruption efforts being led by a woman who can't even talk to her husband about work because pillow talk gets people killed. That is not a functioning justice system. That is a disaster with a very dedicated person trying to hold it together with a duct tape and determination while people literally threaten her life for the audacity of doing her job. Welcome to South Africa, where fighting corruption might actually get you killed, but at least the testimony is voluminous.